everyone, Dr. Amna Husain here, board-certified pediatrician, board-certified lactation consultant, and mom. One of my most popular videos to date has been an introduction on how to start solids. We talk about baby-led weaning, we talk about its pros and cons, we talk about puree feeding, the pros and cons, and we talk about combo feeding. We talk about the best times of day to start feeding and a whole lot of other topics. So if you haven't checked that video out, I really recommend you check it out. I will link it here. But since that video, we've had so many questions and so many really good questions. So I thought I'd do a few mini videos talking about the most common questions I get and some really good ones. Stay tuned. Question 1. When do we start increasing food intake and decreasing milk intake? So I really like this question a lot because it's not really super clear to a lot of parents about how to do this. I also do think that there's some disservice in the statement that said solids before 1 is just for fun. That's actually not really the case, and I think we sometimes set ourselves up for unrealistic expectations when a child turns 12 months old and then we just think automatically they're supposed to be eating gobs and gobs of food and not nursing as frequently, or not supposed to be taking large bottles. And the reason why, as a pediatrician, I'm not a fan of this is because at 12 months of age, we often switch over to something like cow's milk. And if you are interested in starting a different type of milk, that's totally fine. I have videos on that as well, on what the cons and pros are of different cow's milk or soy milk, almond milk, etc. But to stick with the topic about why I don't love large bottles of milk is because that's not natural to be taking in large quantities of milk and then just kind of sprinkling in solid food throughout the day. Ideally, what we want to be doing is having baby working towards a more natural eating pattern where you have about 3 meals and maybe 1 to 2 snacks. So I think that when you begin starting solid food, start with a small amount. Let's say 1 ounce is too much. That's totally fine. Why don't we start it with a thinner texture, let's say, or small amounts of food if you're doing baby-led weaning, and then start either 2 ways. You can either increase in the frequency of solids or increase in the quantity of 1 meal at that time that you are potentially doing your baby-led weaning or your puree feeding for that solid feed at that time of day. So I like to throw numbers in there. I like to throw times in there to make it sound realistic. So let's say, and this is again theoretical, but let's say baby is drinking 6-ounce bottles or nursing and getting 6 ounces or somewhere between 4 to 6 ounces. And they're also doing 1 solid feeding and they're only doing about 1 ounce or a few pieces of sweet potato if you're doing baby-led weaning. And they're doing really well with it, and you're finding that they want to take more food in, then it's totally okay to start offering them a little less in their bottles and then offering them a little bit more food with the meal. Make sure you're offering them water with meals too after your pediatrician has okayed it, because you still want them to get a good amount of fluid in so that they're, keeping their stools nice and regular, that they're having a good amount of urine output. But absolutely take your baby's cues, and it's okay to sort of titrate how much you're giving them in the way of breast milk or formula and how much they're getting in the way of solids. Just make sure you're offering water with meals so that they're getting a good amount of liquid hydration in as well. Next question. Is it necessary to make baby food at home, or can you get it from the store? And then it says what to look for. So I like this question, especially because a lot of parents are worried that if I'm not doing baby food at home, am I doing a disservice to my baby? There's been some data recently, and this is not the first time we've seen this data that's come from the FDA looking at major brands and saying that there's heavy metals in these brands. First of all, I want people to know that heavy metals do exist in the Earth's crust. That is very normal. If you eat sweet potatoes or you eat carrots, root vegetables that come from the ground, they are also going to be high in heavy metals. Brown rice is going to be higher in heavy metals than white rice. It has been soaking in the ground for longer. It's very normal to see those. However, it is quantity dependent. So everything is dose dependent. So if your child is eating all these root vegetables and that's all they eat all the time, whether it's homemade or store-bought, that's probably still a good amount of heavy metals. So that's why we like to be able to diversify what they're eating. A good amount of fruits and vegetables. Make sure you're drinking water. Make sure they're getting in good hydration sources, and still keep in good close contact with your pediatrician if you do have specific concerns about heavy metals. That being said, what other things can you look for, whether it be homemade or store-bought? So when it's homemade, I recommend that you stick with whatever fruits and vegetables are in season, or you can definitely go venture into the freezer aisle because vegetables are easy to get, cleaned, pre-chopped, frozen at their peak, and then easy to be steamed and pureed if that's what you choose to do for your child. If you're baby-led weaning, it is totally okay to shop with the produce that is in season at the time, being able to roast them or steam them how you see fit. Absolutely fine. You don't necessarily need to think about, organic if you are taking the skin off. For example, a banana. You don't necessarily need to worry about organic at that time. But what is important to you is different than maybe what's important to me. So for example, maybe you want to choose to buy organic bananas, even though you're not going to be feeding the peel to your baby. That's okay. That's your choice. Now, when it comes to store-bought foods, what should you be looking for? So I typically like to do the foods that have potentially a good combination of flavors, especially if I've been feeding baby at home a little bit. I think having a good combination of flavors is nice. Sometimes I find some of those monotonic ones fall a little flat and they can be a little bland. Speaking of, if you are cooking something at home, it's totally okay, I think, to add in a little bit of spice, oregano, garlic, play around with your spices, make sure that baby's able to get accustomed to different flavors. But honestly, this comes down to what is important to you. Store-bought, if you want to do a combination of store-bought and homemade. If you're going to do homemade, are you going to do just organic? If you're going to do store-bought, what brand is important to you and what falls within your budget as well? So those are all things actually that I hit on in the starting solids video. So I hope that answers some of your questions, but this next one is really important. And I hear this question a lot. Can we give a 6-month-old a soft boiled egg yolk? And the reason I actually decided to touch this is you might find it very specific, but actually this is a common misconception where people are asking, should I be giving my baby this high fat food? Isn't it good for them? Well, we all know that the egg yolk contains fat, the egg white contains protein, but it is a very common misconception in some cultures and in some old wives' tales that high-fat foods are going to be great for the baby. And I think that even a good fat like the egg yolk still needs to be balanced with the rest of the food, so like an egg white. That being said, if your baby has an egg allergy, that's something you have to clarify with your pediatrician or your allergist because usually the allergy is to the white or the protein. But my important distinction here is please don't just be offering your baby egg yolk. That's just the fat, but not offering the whole egg, which is the whole food. Sometimes people think that more fat is always good and giving tons of egg yolk is going to somehow be good for the baby. But fat is still fat and you want to be able to balance that good fat with other important macronutrients like the protein as well, like a good carbohydrate as well. The best you can. I mean, your baby doesn't need to eat a whole egg a day and allow them to work their way up. But yes, you can absolutely give your baby an egg yolk. Just please don't only give egg yolks is what I'm trying to say. All right. So I hope that Q&A was helpful. We'll do a lot more Q&As on starting solids because you guys have such good questions. If you have more questions, do write them in below. I will try to go through and answer as many as I can. If this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up and I will see you later.